When I say professional basketball player, what do you think of? Probably LeBron James, Stephen Curry, Kevin Durant, guys who have longevity in the National Basketball Association. Yet my next guest answers a few questions that I have had. What happens when you attend a major Division I university, when you go to a pair of Final Fours, when you play against some of the best players in the world, like Julius Randle and Karl Anthony Towns? You play in the NBA against some of the best talent in the pros as well, but then you're left with the uncertainty of jumping from one team to another, playing in Europe for a bevy of different teams across different countries, and you're waiting from the call to get a one-year contract each and every offseason. My next guest is Duje Dukan. He has seen the highs and lows of playing professional basketball. He came up as a ball boy. His father, Ivica, played 15 years in Europe and served as a mentor to Tony Kukoc. By the way, his dad still works for the Chicago Bulls. He would go over some of the stories that his dad has of how he has been in charge of recruiting and scouting international talent. And that came with the likes Bulls fans will certainly remember: Nikola Mirotic, Andres Nocioni, Omer Ashik, to name a few. So without further ado, here's my next guest, Duje Dukan. Let's start from the very beginning. You have a lineage in basketball. Tell me about it.
So yeah, basically started with my pops. He played professionally for about 15 years, up until 1988. He played for a team in Croatia for a while when they were like high level in Europe. He played in Switzerland, and he played in England. His last year playing professionally was Tony Kukoc's first year, playing quote unquote professionally. So my dad was his veteran, to say. And one of the main reasons why Tony ended up coming to the Bulls was because of that kind of bond that they had.
So he had a mentor in your dad.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I mean, especially when he came here, we've spent Thanksgiving, Christmas, all those big holidays together. Me and his son and his daughter. Marin, exactly. Yeah. We all grew up together. He's 7 months younger than me, but we're the same age in school. So we competed against each other in basketball, but AAU and travel, we played together. So we go way, way back.
I think I saw that write up. By the way, shout out to newspapers.com. I love newspapers.com.
Yeah.
Number one, being a nerd. I think I saw a write up of how you guys talked about like competing against one another, but then also like felt it was awkward when you guys played together.
Yeah. We just kind of grew up playing against each other, and there was really no time where we spent playing together, just because Deerfield, Highland Park, like it was that big rivalry. And so when we got to, I think it was maybe my freshman or sophomore year, we joined the same AAU program, and our AAU coach put us on the same team. And obviously, like, you want to be with good players. So we're like, yeah, heck
sure.
yeah. But we never played together. And it was so we just got so used to playing against each other. There was a bit of a different feel to be on the same team. But we enjoyed it. It was fun.
Right. But that's hard because, like, you understand, you have a chemistry because you've competed against each other in so many different ways. But then to turn essentially defense into offense and playing on the same team as somebody has got to be not necessarily culture shock, but just an adjustment. For
sure. I think it's kind of that new school, old school basketball, in the sense of, you know, all the old school guys are like, oh, there's no such thing as friends, da 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 da. And now there's so much switching of teams and switching of players where like everybody's friends with everybody. So it's a bit of a different mentality at a different time.
Does Tony feel, have you talked to him about this? Like the differences in, you know, parasocial relationships within the NBA?
To be honest, I don't think we ever talked about it, but I mean, it was a different time. They were just, I think, more competitive.
Well, they wanted to beat the shit out of each other.
Yeah, for sure. And it was just, you know, when you get on the court, which I can't say it's not the same case today. It's just after the games, now everybody's dapping each other up and all that. Before, you don't really get that. It was like game over. Everybody went to their locker rooms and that's it. They might talk about somebody in the post-game presser, but apart from that, that's really it. But it's different times. You have social media, you have so many different things that can kind of
Brand partnerships.
Exactly. So it's different. And obviously there are certain guys with different mentalities who kind of keep that old school habit, which I respect, but kind of to each their own.
Who do you think in the NBA has that still? I have one name that comes to mind, but I'm curious where you
Who's
go.
yours?
Russell.
Yeah. That would have been mine.
Russell Westbrook is that guy.
100%.
But like, it seems like with him, unless you get personal with him, then he'll get personal with you.
Yeah.
But for him, it's not personal. It's just like, it's like two boxers dapping each other up afterwards.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about him on the court. Like, I'm gonna try to kill you, but we can be like cool afterwards.
For sure. Sure. I think that's definitely one of the few people, when you think about it, every team that he played for, everybody loved him, but everybody else hated him. Like, couldn't stand him because he's so ultra competitive and plays so hard.
So hard still.
And it's funny too, because nowadays, like, playing hard is a skill. It really is. It really is, because not a lot of people play hard. When you watch NBA games, like, how many people can you sit there and watch and say play hard on both ends of the floor for the whole time that they're in the game? It's rare. It's rare.
Not a lot, man. I would say probably if they get time, like the 7th or 8th guy.
Exactly, because they have something to prove. But if you're a starter playing 25, 30 minutes, it's inevitable with the flow of the game, with how shots are going and everything. Like, it's tough.
Yeah, I do agree with you. Because when granted, there's a terrible partnership going on, like no shade, but there's a terrible partnership going on between CHSN and the local distributors, where unless I find a way to watch them, I can't watch Blackhawks games. I can't watch Bulls games. I think the only carrier right now is DirecTV, I want to say.
Yeah.
But like, I can't put a dish up here. So we're kind of screwed in that front. But the games that I have seen, I agree with you. And this is also no shade on this guy, but like, Zach LaVine is a brilliant offensive basketball player. The concerns and criticisms about him defensively, I think, are fair. To the extent that he's had knee surgery a few times, totally understand.
Yeah. Especially
Especially in this day and age where you can get away with that stuff. I totally understand. Sure. But I do agree with you that to an extent, a lot of guys, you're playing the Pelicans on a random Monday night or Tuesday night. I get it. It's not great.
Yeah.
It's not great for the fan, but I do understand it. Okay, let me go back to something. Your dad played professionally.
Yep.
And then he worked with the Bulls. Does he still work with the Bulls?
Yep.
Oh, he still works with the Bulls. Okay, so is that 30 years?
Yeah, 34 years. Longest tenured employee.
Mazel.
Yeah.
That's cool. Okay, so what does he do for the Bulls, and who has he discovered?
So he's the international scout, basically director of international scouting. Now, as of 5-6 years ago, he became like a special assistant to the GM. And players he's discovered. I think Tony was his kind of first one, but he brought guys like.
Did he discover Tony, or did it like benefit him to bring him over because they played together?
I would say both. He worked as an agent his first 2 years after he stopped playing, and then he got a call from Jerry Krause basically saying, hey, we heard you have a lot of ties in Europe. Would you ever be considered in doing European scouting? And at the time it didn't exist. And my dad's like, what? So they flew us out as a family. We came to the finals when they played. Don't quote me on it. I think it was Phoenix. The first one.
The Barkley Marley?
Yeah. I think it was 91.
I think Kevin Johnson was on that team too?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we flew out to Phoenix, saw that finals.
Really?
Yeah. And
awesome.
My dad was like, okay, I got to be a part of this. And we packed our bags and flew to Chicago, and the rest was history.
So that was 91? 92.
Yeah. So
92.
we came here October of 92.
How old were you?
10 months old.
Okay. So you lived in the city?
Yeah.
As a kid?
Well, Deerfield.
Deerfield, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But,
not the city.
Yeah.
Okay, let's be clear.
Let's
be clear about that.
Yeah.
Okay, so he discovered Tony Kukoc.
Tony Kukoc, Tabo Cephalosha, Omer Ashik, Nikola Mirotic, Andres Nocioni. Trying to think. There's a lot of guys.
Those are already like I know some will disagree, but those are well-known Bulls names.
For sure.
Well-known.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. And I mean, there's also stories of recently, I can't remember, where he basically, it was way back in the day, when like not social media, but like the internet and kind of scouting services were becoming popular. And my dad was basically saying how like everybody was kind of looking at each other in terms of looking at each other's notes to kind of see what people were saying. So at one point they created a player, as in like they made him up.
Okay.
And they kind of put his name out there. Some Russian name said like, oh, this kid's unbelievable, da 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 da. And my dad literally got calls from other GMs saying, oh, I watched tape. This kid is unbelievable, da da da. He didn't exist.
Right.
But it's because he popped up on these boards. They're like, oh my God, this kid's great, da 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 da. And my dad was basically, it was him and Jerry Krause, and he was telling Jerry, he's like, I think these guys are literally just looking at these boards and this is how they're getting their ideas.
Oh my God.
And poof.
Really? So when did they finally have this like coming to Jesus moment that this was not a thing?
I don't know. Don't quote me on it. It was early in my dad's time in the States. I'd say probably within 3 or 4 years. And yeah, it was just kind of funny how it all ended up happening. And now you have, 20 million scouting services. Everybody's offering their opinions.
Everybody's
reports.
A scout.
Exactly. So now it's like, even if you don't want to look at it, inevitably somehow you stumble upon somebody's scouting report. So
yeah. How does your dad feel about all that? Like everybody being a scout, what I just said.
I think it's more so the transition for him nowadays, because
being
there's
so
a lot.
Digital.
Yeah, well, digital, but more so just numbers. Now it's a lot more statistic based, and before with him, it was like the eye test. He would go to games, see you warm up, see the way you handled yourself, come to practices and things like that. And there's also things like, don't get me wrong, I think numbers are great. I think they can tell you a lot, but there's a lot of stuff that you can't see on like with numbers.
Like what?
Well, I'll give a great story.
Please.
So when I was in Sacramento, Vlade Divac was the GM, and we were talking about numbers, da 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 da, and he goes, "Numbers are a lot like a mini skirt." He's like, "They show you what you might want to see, but not what you really want to see." And so ever since I heard that, I was like, that is the best comparison I've ever heard. Yeah. And so when I say it doesn't show you because numbers can be very misleading in the sense. So like there's that whole plus minus. When guys are on the court, you have to look at who they're on the court with, what was going on at that time, how they were playing. There's so many different things that are factored in at that point that aren't accounted for in that plus minus. So guys might have, I don't know, a -6, but in reality, they were with the second 5, or they were with a couple bench guys because somebody was hurt. There's so many things. So I think like you can use that, but take it with a grain of salt, Yeah,
I feel you. When he found, well, first off, how did he find Nikola Mirotic?
So Nikola was playing in Real Madrid as a youngster. My dad saw him in a couple national team competitions when he was young. Saw him because he would kind of circulate those big teams in terms of watch practices or watch games. And then their coach kind of talked about him, said he was, a talented kid, and watched him, saw something in him. And as time went on, my dad kind of kept an eye on him. And got to the point where like he was kind of climbing on those boards, as we said. And the Bulls felt like, he could be a great contribution to them. They ended up picking him, and the rest was history.
Isn't he still playing?
Yeah. He left the States, what?
Oh man, that was a while ago. That was after the Pelicans.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think it was just before
Zion.
COVID. Just before COVID. So I think 2019 was his first year overseas. Where he went to Barcelona, and he's been there ever since.
Is he still with Barcelona?
No, now he's in Milan.
Oh, okay.
Terrible life.
Yeah, totally. Like the Pulisic life.
Exactly.
Yeah. What I remember about Mirotic was him just getting really crapped on in the media a lot. And I also remember the same with Nocioni, because Nocioni could not shoot when he came into the league. I had a feeling that he could be a shooter, But from the tape that we saw, it felt like Victor Oladipo at Indiana, where there's just like a really raw product, but something is there, How, in your eyes, did Nocioni turn around the early rough years of his career, in my opinion?
Well, to be honest with you, I think Noach was just a different player. I think he was that type of guy. He was a lot like Joakim in the sense that you hated to play against him, but you loved to have him on your team. And he was somebody who I think the teams maybe the last 10 years missed, in the sense where when you had those stars, were like when they played LeBron, and LeBron did his whole antics where, crying for fouls, whatever the case may be, but he's been way better. Like, it was earlier in his career, but crying about fouls. Noach was the type of guy where if you come down, I will lay you out and make you feel it. You know what I mean? And he's not afraid of it. Mm-hmm. And that was, and dudes didn't want to really mess with him because they're like, okay, he's Argentinian, he's kind of crazy, like, okay. And that was something that I think the Bulls missed, was somebody who was just a hard-nosed guy who played defense, stood up for his teammates, and, knocked down shots. Because at the end of the day, I think when he first came in, it's a big transition for European players. Now it's not as big. Before it was. And I think he kind of just needed some time to get his feet wet and understand, the NBA game, and obviously the Bulls were kind of a work in progress at the time. Yep. So, just as they were getting better, he was trying to find his way. But also too, like, he was towards the end of his career when he came here. He already built up a great career in Europe, played for so many years, and he was kind of on the tail end. So, I think overall, I think he was a great contribution to the Bulls. Not somebody who people are going to probably talk about, but I think he was vital to a lot of those like early Bulls runs.
Yeah, I think a lot of people will remember him. It's just that we're getting older.
100%.
Like I think it's just kind of an indictment of like where we are right now, because Bulls fans loved him.
Yeah,
loved him. Look, Chicago is like, it's a very diverse city. It's a tough city, but we will love you if you bust your ass.
100%.
We will love you. Like, I remember I was at Wrigley Field and Milton Bradley he hit a grounder that was slow rolling, that he maybe, I wouldn't say he could have beat it out, but maybe. And the crowd noticed that he didn't run. And they got on him for not running.
For sure.
These are like just the small hustle things that I feel like Chicagoans, and I think Knicks fans too, like really appreciate about their teams. And gosh, what was his name who played for New York? What was his name?
Give me a time period.
It was recent. DiVincenzo. They love DiVincenzo. Well, Italianness aside.
Yeah.
It was because he would stick up for his teammates. He would go after loose balls. He was obviously fighting for his next contract. But it's a part of like what we touched on previously, the try as hard as you effing can, hustle your ass off culture.
It's that blue collar mentality.
For sure.
And this city like lives on it, embraces it so quickly. I mean, you look at guys like Joakim. When Joakim first came into the league,
oh my gosh,
people were bashing him through the roof. But as he started to play, you can't not love him if he's on your team. He plays so goddamn hard, so hard. And, it's hard not to get behind guys. And you had Taj Gibson, like that whole team, Luol Deng, guys who, when they came into the league, some of them had high expectations or a high ceiling and some didn't. But they played so hard and played for each other that it was tough not to love those teams. It really was.
Agreed. Didn't Luol get traded on draft night from Phoenix to the Bulls?
Yes.
I want to say?
Yes. It was him and Ben Gordon. I think they traded like the 3 for the 4 and 7 or something like that.
Yeah.
Don't quote me. I can't remember. But yeah, he was traded on draft night to the Bulls. And yeah, the rest is history.
So it was reported a lot when you were at Wisconsin and then you came back for like Big Ten tournaments and stuff that you were the ball boy for the Bulls. There's one thing that I found. Do you remember the Brad Miller Shaq fight?
100%.
Okay, so take me through it.
100%. It was actually kind of cool. So I think it was 2 weeks ago, Derrick Rose had his retirement night, little dinner and festivities. And so after, it was like friends and family had a dinner at Tao. Cool. And then after, you could like go out, go to the club. And, you know, for me, as you just said, with being a ball boy, I grew up around a lot of these guys. So, you know, Luol Deng, I've known for a while. Joakim, I've known for a while. Derrick, I mean, fun fact, Derrick Rose's first house, his townhouse that he got, my mom found it for him. Oh, okay. So it's crazy. And then like obviously Brad Miller, but it was funny. I ran into Brad Miller and he's like, obviously we said hi to each other and he goes, I got to ask you a question. I was like, what's up? He goes, can my wife take a picture with you? I was like, absolutely. He goes, she's a diehard Kings fan. She's like, she remembers watching you, you know, obviously we're still diehard Kings fans. We took the picture and then we reminisced about the fight. So basically what happens.
How old were you?
Oof. There's footage on YouTube.
There is footage on YouTube. I saw it.
I can't remember when it was. I wasn't more than like 9 or 10 years old.
Okay.
So this was back in the NBA days where the bench is wrapped around. Now it's just kind of straight. But now, obviously, because the NBA and teams want to make more money, they push those seats out and gave it like courtside seats. Mm-hmm. So it would be an L shape. And as a ball boy, I always sat in front of that L shape. Basically, most of the time, those were like the injured reserve guys. And I'm sitting there watching the game. My job was I would fold towels as guys went in. I would grab their stuff, throw it behind the bench, give a guy a towel when he's like coming back onto the bench.
Okay.
So at one point, I think it was Tyson Chandler or somebody said something to me and I had turned around. I'm not paying attention, says something, jokes. And as I'm turning around, Shaq falls directly on my legs. Mind you, I'm 9 years old. 300-pound guy falls on my legs. I'm freaking out because they're like going at it. They're hitting. So thank God for Charles Oakley. They're like, I'm like squirming around trying to get out as these dudes are like just hitting each other. And at one point, Charles Oakley gets up in like a push-up position. And that gives me room to kind of wiggle out. One of the Bulls trainers picks me up, puts me on like the table, and then they just go at it. So he just gave me like a 3-4 second window to get out, and then boom, they went at it.
So he saved your life.
Pretty much. So shout out Charles Oakley.
Uh-huh. Wait, you told Brad Miller this story?
Well, he knows it, but I think they actually did a special. I think it was my junior year. We were playing in the tournament against Baylor. And you know how they have that crossover with the NBA and college basketball where like Shaq and Kenny sometimes do college games.
Yeah.
So they played the clip to Shaq and they're like, do you know this kid? They like showed a clip of me shooting a shot against Baylor. And they're like, does this kid look familiar? He goes, nah. And then they played the clip and they're like, you stumbled over him. He goes, man, I should have knocked Brad Miller's ass out.
He tried.
100%.
He tried.
Brad Miller and him both got lucky that he whiffed. Because if he would have made contact, yikes.
It was a wide slap, too. I don't know if I couldn't tell with his fist. Maybe it was a punch. But it was like a wide helicopter sort of like method of trying to knock out Brad Miller. Dude, oh my God, that is so good. Yeah. Did you ever connect with Charles Oakley about it?
No, I don't think I've seen him since he left the Bulls, probably.
Long time ago.
Yeah. And that's the thing too, like being a ball boy, like I was literally a kid, but there's so many stories about like growing up with these guys. Another one of my favorite, Jamal Crawford.
Jay Crossover.
One of my favorite Bulls, the nicest human being ever. So take you back, I think it was 2nd or 3rd grade where we had to sell magazines in school. So like I went to my dad's office and like, you know, a couple of people brought like Men's Digest, whatever, Bull, like random magazines. And I think it was maybe like 2 days before it was due. And I was like under my quota that I had to sell. And I stumbled upon Jamal and I was like, hey, do you want to buy some magazines? He goes, sure. He's like, how many do you need to sell? I was like, well, I'm like 6 under. He goes, oh, just give me 6 then. I'm like, well, which ones do you want? He goes, it doesn't matter. Just pick any 6. He's like, that you might think I like, and I'll buy them. I was like, done. And from that day on, I was like, wow, he did not have to do that, but he bought like 6 subscriptions for like a year or 2, whatever the case may be. And you know, just the nicest human being ever.
Yeah. I haven't encountered any negativity towards him at all. Like,
No.
never. No one ever like disrespects, because a lot of NBA guys now go into media, right? He does media stuff for TNT. I've never heard anyone say, I don't know what Jay Crossover was talking about. Because he not only knows ball, he played at University of Michigan, he played for many teams, but he is he's like the embodiment of a well-respected NBA player.
Him and JJ are one of the too few guys that I really enjoyed hearing speak. Like when JJ was doing first take stuff and he was like really leaving Stephen A speechless. I was like, man, I love this. I love this. But both of those guys, like you said, I think they were very well respected, but they're also like well spoken. And I don't think when they were talking and analyzing games, it wasn't like clickbait. You have a lot of these guys now where it's just like they'll say wild takes just to get clickbait and get more attention, get more views, which it's fine. I get it. Like you want to make money, you want to get views, it's fine. But at the end of the day, like, you know, you're not giving the best insight or the best look into the game. You know, you might be bad mouthing people that are your boys or that you played with. So it's not the best look, you know? So I think, you know, instead of kind of growing the game, we're growing a picture of the game, if that makes sense. Like we're painting an incorrect picture and kind of painting these guys in a different light than they should be painted.
Do you think that's also not only like I think it's twofold. Like it's where we are as a basketball consuming community that there's an appetite for it, which is bad.
For sure.
And also that people are going into it reshaping how they think about the game to present it in a way that they have to cater to it, you know? So I think it's twofold.
And at the end of the day, it's like, I think, as you said, society today is more likely to fall for the clickbait stuff, the stuff that's like more prone to be a headline. Like, why do people not like to interview Jokic? Because he's boring. The guy doesn't care.
Totally.
He talks about his horses. He talks about Serbia, and that's it. His answers are always bland, and he doesn't give you anything. That's why people are like, oh, like, let me get like Russell Westbrook. Let me get somebody else who might like not slip up, but just, you know, some of those guys are so competitive
honest.
that they're honest, and they might just like kind of give you a headline once in a while. And that's what it is. Like, you know, certain guys are just not going to give you anything. And it's like, we got to interview this guy again. But he's such a good player that it's like, you can't not interview him.
Totally. Yeah. You have to hold court with that. And also your editors are depending on it.
100%.
This is I'm sure you've seen the Darius Miles, Quentin Richardson podcast.
Yes.
Who, you know, I'm totally stealing from them. Who was the first player to bust your ass?
Oof. I don't know. Probably my welcome to the NBA moment would have been just DeMarcus Cousins. I think
teammate.
Yeah. Playing open gym with him, where it was like I got caught up on a switch or something. Like I played, let's say in that day, a 4-man, but I was like scrawnier and not like a 4-man as he was. He played 4-5. And he would catch at the mid post and he just looks at me. He's like, okay, boom, 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 layup. I'm just like, okay, cool. So yeah, that was just like, and I'm like, and you know, you're competitive. You want to like prove it, but sometimes dudes are just so much bigger and so much, you can't do anything about it. Another guy like Rudy Gay, so talented.
So good.
So talented.
So freaking good.
One of the most like talented and naturally gifted scorers I've ever seen. Like, talk about a guy who can just make shots, whether it's contested, not contested, whatever the case may be. Didn't matter who was guarding him. He'd get it up and he could score on you. So I think, but DeMarcus was definitely the kind of quote unquote welcome to the NBA moment for sure. For me.
So you played alongside him. Was he a big shit talker on the bench?
You mean to other people or
yeah.
like?
No, yeah. Not to you guys.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah. Cuz will definitely like talk shit for sure. I think it's just kind of a different age. You got guys like Draymond and Russell, and you know, it's different. But I mean, he was, when you think back to Cuz in his days,
prime Cuz,
in Sacramento, like
double machine.
And it's tough too, because I think a lot of this like bad rep that he got in terms of him being crazy and everything is just like the guy's competitive and he's just losing all the time. Like, you get stuck on like consecutive losing teams. It's tough not to go crazy. And like, you look at it, a lot of times he was the only guy who was performing night in, night out, and didn't get help. Officiating would screw him over. And at the end of the day, his emotions got the best of him. Boom, 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 technical. And I get it. And you look at when he went to New Orleans, it was a different story. He kind of cleaned up his act. He wasn't as like problematic with the referees or anything like that. And he played great. Like him, you put him, AD and Mirotic, they were great. And Rondo was their point guard. They were great. Fun to watch. And then unfortunately he had those injuries and tried to come back and Golden State and everything, but it was different. Not a lot of people can come back from those injuries, especially like with his body and how much weight he has to carry. It's tough.
True.
Not to say that he couldn't play in the NBA now. It's just GMs and the NBA kind of have a taste and an appetite for different things now.
Totally. You mentioned another teammate of yours, Rondo. Was he one of the highest basketball IQ players you've ever been around?
By far. Not just that, but probably one of my favorite teammates I ever had. Another guy who got a very bad rep around the NBA, and I think very undeservedly. A really, really good human being. I'll tell you a perfect example. He signed with us. I had been in SAC for maybe a month already. Just kind of like workouts or whatever the case may be. And he shows up first day, introduces himself to everybody, and he grabs one of the video guys. He goes, I want you to get clips on every one of these guys, find me their sweet spots, where they like to shoot the ball, where they like to catch it, and all that. And he literally went home, watched it over the next 2 or 3 days, and then he would meet with guys. Okay, where do you want the ball? Okay, where do you prefer it? Okay, what kind of actions do you like? And that's just like one example. Then I'll never forget, we were playing the Clippers at home. It was our second game of the season. And this was like Chris Paul, DeAndre Jordan, Blake Griffin, prime time.
Yep.
So it was a dead ball situation. They were bringing it down the floor, and I was not playing. I think I suited up. I can't remember, but I'm on the bench, and Rondo is about at half court, turning to us, and he's calling out the play, essentially saying, "Hey, watch out for the double stagger, pick and roll with CP." CP starts bringing the ball down, calls out a play. What happens? Stagger, pick and roll. As he called it, we get a stop, go down, score. There was another game, might have been like a couple months after that, but it was one of the first time that I had seen it happen. We were up 3, and I can't remember what George Karl said. He was basically like, let's switch everything, whatever. And Rondo's like, no, guard the 3-point line. And I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, what? So he literally had everybody stand around the 3-point line and essentially forcing everybody to go inside. It's like, great, we'll take a 2. I don't care. It was like 3 seconds left. Let him take a 2. And the team was so confused that they didn't know what to do. We got the ball, game over, won the game. Because it was such like a different kind of like way of thinking about it. I'm sure it had been done before, but it was the first time I had seen it be done. But that's another example of just like how his mind really like worked. Another perfect example of what a great teammate he is. I think we had 6 or 7 guys who didn't play a whole lot, some vets, some young guys. And after games, we'd come in, watch film, and then George Karl would call it like a maintenance day, like kind of do whatever you have to do. Some guys would get treatment, some guys would get shots up, whatever the case may be. But the guys who didn't really play and the young guys would do we'd do a little bit of skill work and then we'd play. So there was like countless times where, we had 7 guys, we had 5 guys, and Rondo's like, "Oh, y'all need an extra? He played 35 minutes last night." He's like, "Yeah, I'll hop in, I'll play." I'm like, what are you doing? And he literally plays with us, and not just plays with us, but he's coaching us. Like, hey man, nah, you can't catch the ball there. You got to catch it lower. Nah, if you're going to set a screen, I need you to set it flat so I can attack. Just a great dude. And then ironically enough, fast forward, I think it was 2 years or the next year. I can't remember, but the Bulls were thinking about bringing him in.
I remember that.
And I was working out at the Advocate Center, and Gar Foreman came to me. He's like, "Hey, no bullshit. What's your thought on Rondo?" I was like, one of my favorite teammates by far. Loved him. Absolutely like would take him in a heartbeat. I think he would be perfect for us. You know, we need a true point, somebody who can lead the team, but also well respected, where guys will listen to him. And they end up signing him. And I really do believe if Rondo didn't dislocate his finger against Boston, we would have beat Boston.
Mm-hmm.
We beat him 2-0 at their place, came back to Chicago. Rondo gets hurt. We go down. And it was funny. I ran into his agent this summer in Slovenia when I went to Goran Dragic's kind of farewell game.
Yeah, I remember seeing footage.
And so I run into Bill Duffy, and he's like, "Hey, by the way," he's like, "we owe you commission." I was like, "What you mean?" He goes, "You're one of the main reasons why the Bulls decided to sign Rondo." I was like, "Say less. You let me know when."
Yeah, seriously. Could he succeed as a coach?
Yeah.
Will he get an opportunity? Does he want the opportunity?
That I don't know. I mean, I think he does. I think he started working with the Bucks recently. I just saw a clip of KG grabbing him and basically saying, like, "We know why you're here. You still try to get a 5-day contract. Come on, man. You're not fooling anybody." I think at the end of the day, his mind and everything, he would make a really good coach. Now the question is, does he want to do that? Does he want to do more front office? Like, what does he want to do? So I think it's
could he do front office? Yeah. Because, I mean, you're telling me so many detailed examples of how his mind works from a basketball perspective.
He's got a photographic memory. So, like, once he sees something once, he's got it. So a lot of those things are so helpful, where it's not just being a coach, but being a GM and everything. And I think, you know, after you've played for, I don't know how many years he's played with so many people, he can really evaluate talent. I think he can, you know, see players. But also I think he's got the respect level from people in the game. So yeah, I think he can do coaching or like front office. I wouldn't be surprised if he does coaching at some point, like the JJ Redick route, but we'll see.
Wasn't Bellinelli on your team too?
Yep.
Yeah. So he was like an incredible shooter.
Yeah. We had, I mean, on paper, we had a great team.
Yeah, you did.
We had no reason to not make the playoffs. We were, I think it was going into All-Star break, we were the 8th seed. And then after All-Star break, we lost 8 in a row. And then everything kind of just went downhill from there. But I mean, like, you had guys like Rondo. Our backup was Darren Collison. You had Marco Bellinelli, you had Omri Caspi, Quincy Acey, Cuz, Rudy Gay, Costa Koufos. Seth Curry, young Seth Curry. Ben McLemore.
Oh, this is like longevity in the NBA.
Yeah, so we had dudes. We had guys who you know, really, Caron Butler was my vet. Can't forget him. He was on the team. He could still hoop a little bit. So, you know, we really had no reason why we couldn't make the playoffs or at least fight for a playoff spot. Unfortunately, there was a big disconnect between players, coaches, front office. It was kind of a bit dysfunctional, unfortunately. And I mean, you can kind of tell with the changeover they've had, firing of coaches, firing of GMs and everything. But I'll tell you what, the fan support there, second to none.
Yeah. In Sacramento?
Oh, yeah.
How come?
Unbelievable. I mean, I don't know why, but they love their hoops. Like, love. To the point where even when we were struggling bad, they filled the arena. They brought their cowbells. They were cowbells. Like going crazy. And like, they are really ride or die with the Kings. And, you know, I still watch Kings games. I still want them to do well. By all means, I would love to see that city win a title. Would love. Because those people deserve it. Like, literally seeing, like, when they made the playoffs, what was it? 2 years ago, and they had that great run against the Warriors. And people like, oh,
7-game series.
Yeah, people like, oh, they're back. And then the next year, they don't make the playoffs. It's like, shit. Come on, man. So, you know, hopefully this year with DeMar, maybe that'll bring them another step higher. I know they kind of had their rough start. Mike Brown gets fired. Doug Christie takes over. Hopefully that can ignite something under them. But we'll see. I mean, that city, as I said, their fans are unbelievable.
Doesn't the lack of leadership, and this is just a question, doesn't it fall on ownership at some point to have that sort of turnover every single year or even every other year?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different things that go into it. Obviously the kind of rumor or idea that's been going around the NBA has been that it's been ownership's fault. Like Mike Malone came out and said it, like,
Yeah, when Mike Brown got fired.
Yeah, he's
I
like,
saw that.
That's exactly how I got fired, yada, yada, yada. And then Steve Kerr came out and said, like, that's crazy. The guy was literally coach of the year 2 years ago. And I mean, at the end of the day, when you're an owner, you kind of have the right to do whatever the hell you want.
Oh, totally. You cut the
sometimes it might not be right. Sometimes it might be. I think he means well. I think he wants the team to win. But again, sometimes decisions might not be in the best interest of the team or in the best interest of the organization. Sometimes they might be. You never know. I mean, it's the whole idea with like drafting now. A lot of guys will take guys who are 18, 19 years old and hoping that they become something.
Right.
Instead of taking a guy who's 22, 23, who's proven and can give you something. So you're taking a project, hoping it pans out to something, instead of somebody who's proven and can give you something immediately.
Totally.
So it's like it's kind of like with those decisions, it's like you're working towards something in the future that maybe the person that you hire next will be that person that you need, instead of sticking with somebody who, gets it done now, not to the level that you might want, but gets it done. Do
you feel that's a trend in front offices where they don't want the 3 or 4 year player out of college and they'd rather just take a guy who had like a good Big Ten tournament per se, who's 18 years old?
Yeah.
Why?
That's just the new age now. You had it when it was hot. Probably when I came out, it was popular. You still had a lot of guys like Malcolm Brogdon was a 3-4 year guy.
Yeah. He got a nice chip.
Yeah. His fellow teammate, Justin Anderson, also stuck around in the league for a little bit. Peyton Pritchard, perfect example, was in college for a while. Like, there's still examples.
Shout out Lucian, played against him.
Yeah. So there's examples of guys who stuck around in college for, more than that 1 year or 2 years. But for whatever reason, now the trend is to kind of go younger and, play for that like upside and hope that guys can develop into something super special.
So an example that I see of that, although he did have he had a nice college career at Arizona, is the Bulls with Dalen Terry when they drafted him.
Yeah.
I also thought, you can take it. I also thought yeah, it's a project, but I also see the potential because I've seen the highlights. So if, hindsight, it's easier to analyze, but I would rather have the Taj Gibsons of the world when they're 22, 23 years old, practically men compared to the boys that are coming in, and you know what you're going to get out of him, and he's still in the league in comparison to potentially just wasting a first round pick.
And that's the gamble these days. You never know. A lot of times, like they have the draft lottery for picks. I feel like the draft itself is kind of just like a lottery. You literally
in recent years, yes.
Yeah, you really hope that a lot of these guys can pan out to something. You look at so many examples, whether it's injuries, whether it's bad fits, or whatever the case may be, where guys get drafted super young, have high potential, but they just don't pan out. It just happens, I mean, look at Lowry, Markkanen, perfect example.
Great example.
Lowry was here. He was good, but
he was good, but he also got shit on a lot too.
He could never really break through that scene. We didn't know if it was coaching, play style, whatever the case may be.
His coach was
Boylan.
Jim Boylan. Yeah, it was Jim Boylan.
And then he gets traded to Cleveland. He plays solid, goes to Utah, and just pops off. Pops off. And, there's been countless examples of guys just changing scenes like that and going crazy. So, to your point, I think for me personally, I think you got to have a balance. You got to kind of figure out a way to, evaluate both, but not put one above the other, just because at the end of the day, with those young guys, you never know. It's such a crapshoot of hoping that he's going to amount to something, or, I'm not sure. We just got to wait and see. Because at the end of the day, perfect example, guy like Matas Buzelis, great potential. I think he's going to be a really good player. Local kid. Could be really good for Chicago.
Could.
Again, there's a lot that goes into it now. It's like, are you going to develop him? Are you going to play him enough that he can get better? Because at the end of the day, it's not just, he's going to get better through workouts. No, he needs to play. So, whether that's G League, whether it's NBA, you got to be on the floor. He's 19, 20 years old. You got to play. You got to play. That's it.
Yep.
So, hopefully he can get that time and get those opportunities to continue to develop, because that's a perfect example. Like a guy who's taken 11th probably could have been taken top 3, top 4 based on his potential, but he wasn't, just because for whatever reason he slipped in people's minds. Now we see.
Right.
Because he damn well could be the number 1 player coming out of that draft down the road. He could be the best player in this draft.
True. You said you had a connection to Derrick Rose.
Yeah.
Why do you think Chicago's a given? Why do you think outside of Chicago he's so beloved as an NBA player?
I think Derrick is one of the few guys that the video that always stuck out to me was his All-Star. When you have Bron, Chris Bosh, D Wade, and Dwight Howard, I think it was the starters.
The commercial?
No. It was when they get introduced at the All-Star game.
Oh my God.
They're all dancing.
Great video.
And Derrick's just like there.
Stone cold.
Waves, and that's it. Like, that's Derrick. Derrick is just there to hoop. He's not about the extra hoopla. He's not about the attention or anything. And I think people just gravitated towards it. They're like, this guy just wants to hoop. He's humble, doesn't talk shit, works, and people just loved it. And I think, obviously he had such an attractive play style that it's hard not to like fall in love with it. And so, put that together with the amazing story that he had coming from Chicago. He was drafted by his hometown team, plays well, youngest MVP ever. It's hard not to like fall for the guy. And then obviously you fast forward to all the injuries and stuff like that. You can't not root for him. It's kind of like Lonzo. I couldn't be happier for the guy.
Totally.
Like, good for you, man. Like, I hope he has a great career. I hope he gets another max contract, like plays great, everything. Because, I've had knee surgeries. I know what it's like, but not to that extent. I've been out for 2-3 months.
Lonzo and Derrick's extent.
Yeah. And these dudes have been out for 2 years, back to back, 3 years, counted out, basically saying your career's over. Derrick comes back, has a 50-point game in Minnesota. Lonzo comes back, starts. Like,
dunks.
They said his knee was never going to be the same. Stephen A. last summer was like, you're done. He's not playing again.
He was talking mad shit about Lonzo, too.
Oh, yeah.
He said he couldn't get out of a chair, and then Lonzo showed him getting out of a chair by his pool.
Exactly.
That was wild. Wild. So with your connection to Derrick and how committed he is, what did you make of his play style when he came in? I know you said it was attractive. It was obviously very aggressive. But as an NBA player, what did you see out of him?
I think Stacey King put it perfectly. Too big, too fast, too good, too strong. Literally, that was Derrick. I think he was the first guy, pair him with like Russell Westbrook of the new age point guards that came in. It was the more scoring point guards who could still facilitate, but they could score, they could run, and it was like a very dynamic, athletic type of point guard. And Derrick wasn't small. He's 6'3", 6'4", got a solid size, solid build. And that kind of like implemented that new age of point guards. I think his play style definitely was not beneficial for the long term. But when you're young, you don't care. Like, you just want to do what you have to do. A guy who I think of every time when I think about Derrick in terms of longevity is Vince Carter. Vince Carter came to the league dunking on everyone and anything. Fast forward to his last 3 years, what was he? He was a spot up 3-point shooter. His game completely changed. And I think Derrick developed it too, as he kind of got older and went through those injuries. He wasn't he was still athletic, but he was not trying to dunk on people. Right. He was not like, he figured out other ways to be effective and be like efficient. So, I think when Derrick came into the NBA, you could tell there was flashes of like, this kid could be special, but nobody, I think, really knew how good he could be. Unfortunately, I really do think we never got to see prime Derrick Rose.
I agree.
I think he had more left in the tank, whether it was maintaining that same MVP level year or continuing to get better, because he was only 22 at the time. And they say, prime basketball level is 28 to 31. Those are like your best years. It's tough.
Yeah, it's tough. You went to Wisconsin.
Yep.
You played under Boat. What? I was gonna be like, it's plugged in. That's crazy. That's crazy. Yeah, I might have. Oh shit! The game starts in 5 seconds. Was that Kirk Cousins? Is he a bro? Seriously.
Crazy.
Seriously.
There he is.
Yeah, I remember the Bears didn't even interview him. Andy Reid when he left the Eagles. Are we good? Okay. Wait, so what happened with that camera? It is like 12 years old. You set this one up on purpose. I don't feel like really sense of what you do. But it wasn't shown at all. You can see it on here on camera too. And so when you turn it on, it gives you this. It gives you a little bit and then it won't. I couldn't figure out either. Oh, that's more than that. That's clear right there. I don't know. I mean, if anything, it's a backup when you need to cut away. Because, like, also, like, if you just want to go between that's what I've been doing. It's like the 2-shot is a nice go between for when you guys talk over each other. So yeah, that's why I just have it rolling so you can use it if you need to. It's just not built into this. It didn't even last. That was like 15 minutes. No, it did nothing. But I've just been starting to push things. That was my first camera. Whatever. Yeah, I don't know. As long as it's his camera and my camera, I'll let him know. All right. All right. Good. Recording on both. All right. Sweet. You're starting on me? Okay. So you played at Wisconsin. You played under Bo Ryan. Bo Ryan is actually someone that I interviewed at Big Ten Media Days when I was in college, like many years ago.
Okay.
And I was intimidated. I was really, really intimidated. And then, you know, it's sort of like you just start asking him basketball questions and he'll answer. He also knows that we're like the student newspaper guys. So,
yeah.
You know, but what was it like to play under him?
Bo was a very old school minded coach. Very old school minded in the sense where we didn't really have a relationship with him. It was kind of strictly business in terms of like on the court product, like you're performing, There wasn't really much talking outside of it.
Huh.
You know, you see guys like, you know, Tom Izzo and all these guys who have relationship with their players. That wasn't really the case with us. For me, it was tough. You know, I was recruited by Coach Howard Moore. You know, he was pretty much one of the main reasons why I decided to go to Wisconsin. I developed a relationship with him. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Big Ten, being close to home, playing on a national stage was very appealing to me. But again, at my age, whatever it was, 17, 18 years old I was 17 when I signed to go to Wisconsin. I thought big picture. You know, my mom always kind of stressed, you don't know what's going to happen. Go somewhere where you can get an education and prepare yourself long term. Because I didn't know how far basketball could take me. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I dreamed of, you know, NBA and all that stuff, but you never know. God forbid, injuries, whatever the case may be, you want to have a backup plan. And I felt like Wisconsin was a very respected school. You could get a really good education, but basketball wise was really good. The other thing too was the whole swing offense that they had at the time, where they kind of took advantage of mismatches, played a little bit of inside outside. And I was like, it's literally perfect for me. Like 6'8", 6'9", I can play inside, play outside, like perfect. Signed, went there, and it was like a big wake up call in terms of, I think now it's a little bit different, but back then a lot of kids get a culture shock because, you come from your high school, your area where you're the best player by far, everybody's patting you on the back saying, hey, great job, whatever. You come there, well, you're surrounded by guys that were the best players on their team, best players in their area, and now you have to compete. For me, I really didn't get a chance to play until my junior year. And
it's a lot of time.
Yeah, it was tough. I mean, it was a lot of long days, long seasons, sitting on the bench, contemplating. I'm like, do I really want to stay here? Should I go somewhere else? Whatever the case may be. Because at the end of the day, when you make a commitment to go, you go to play. Like, you don't go to sit. And so finally my junior year, I got an opportunity to play. I'm like, okay, cool.
Wait a minute, stop a second. Why did you wait? I know it's different now where guys can transfer left and right, but why did you wait?
I think it was a combo of two things. I think I put a lot of blame on myself in the sense that like, oh, I could have done things better, or I could have played better. Looking back at it, could I have transferred my sophomore year and probably gone and played? Yeah. Should I have? I don't know. That's like the question. Like nowadays, people ask me like, are you happy with, your decision to go to Wisconsin? Absolutely. Because I think not just do I have 2 Final Fours to show for, but I think the experiences that I went through with Coach Ryan, whether it was, my playing just very inconsistent and just not playing my first 3 years, it taught me a lot about life, but also about becoming a man, and also about having a boss that might not give a shit about you for a while, And so it prepared me for coaches that I had now playing professionally. And it was kind of the sense where I was prepared for whatever, And I think for me, looking back on it, could I have left after my junior year? I thought about it. I thought about leaving. But I think for me, at the end of the day, the biggest thing was I knew I was going to be a big piece of that team. They wouldn't have been as good if I left. But the other thing too was I'm like, we have a chance to do something special.
Totally. That team was stacked.
Yeah. I'm like, we have a chance to do something special. I love these guys. I can't do it. And I think that's one thing that I can really honestly say what made that team so special is just the bond that we had. We genuinely loved each other. We loved to be around each other. Like when we weren't on the court competing against each other, we were at our apartments playing video games, hanging out, movie nights, whatever the case may be. We were just together. I think Andy North gave a perfect example. They did a documentary kind of about our story of our Final Four run. And he said it perfectly. He's like, the people who got the short end of the stick were the girlfriends. Because a lot of the time, they didn't get to see us because we'd spend so much time together.
Yeah.
Where it'd be like, okay, where do I fall in? But we just like loved hanging out with each other, spending time with each other, and it translated onto the court. And that's like a main reason why we had the success that we did.
Sam Decker.
Yep.
Frank Kaminsky.
Yep.
Nigel Hayes.
Yep.
Bronson was there too. Yep. Who am I missing? There's a few others.
Ethan Happ was a freshman.
Ethan Happ was there. Yeah.
Vito Brown.
I mean, these are good Big Ten players and good NBA players and good European players now.
For sure.
Really good European players.
For sure.
Who was the funniest of the bunch?
We really had some personalities, man. Frank was up there. Nigel was up there. Bronson. I think everybody kind of had their moments, and that's what
Decker
made
was
it.
good on Twitter.
Sam lived for social media. Sam loves social media, like loves it. He was one that a lot of times when we would get in arguments in the locker room, it was like, oh, let me go to Twitter. Like, let's ask Twitter. I'm like, come on, Sam. Like, because a lot of times, like, we had lockers next to each other. So not only were we like competing against each other, but like we would have arguments. So then he's like, okay, let's go to Twitter. I'm like, Sam, you have 20,000 followers. I have 2. What the fuck are they going to side with?
Totally.
Come on, man. So, but I think our dynamic, credit to him, because it could have been a lot of bad blood, a lot of animosity when you're competing with a guy. Because at the end of the day, for the two of us, it ended up being like a revolving door in terms of when Sam fucked up, I'm up. When I fucked up, he's up. Great example. We were in the Bahamas for the Battle of Atlantis championship game. Coach Ryan has this thing where he would always sit down for the tip. As soon as it tips off, he stands up. We all have to stay standing, and then we sit and kind of sit accordingly. So there's not like a seat open. Like Coach Ryan stands the whole game. He never sits.
Yeah.
But he sits for like the tip. We're all standing, and then we go. So tip off, Sam, we get the ball. Sam makes a bad pass. I'm looking to my chair to sit down, and all I hear is, Duje, get him the fuck out of there. I don't even sit down. I go.
Yeah.
And so I ended up playing, I think, 30 minutes that game. It was against Oklahoma in the championship game. One of my better games in my career.
Who was on that Oklahoma team?
Buddy Hield.
I had a feeling. Yep.
Buddy Hield was Ryan Spangler, Isaiah Cousins. Who else did they have?
I had a feeling Buddy was on that team because I feel like I remember seeing that game.
Yeah. And so it was funny because Tony Kukoc texted my mom after the game and he goes, did Duje really start? And my mom's like, no, he just subbed in super quick. And like, that's literally the epitome of how it was for me and Sam. Like, it was just as soon as one of us made a mistake, boom, the other one's coming in.
But how did it not get because it can, how did it not get personal between you guys?
Because I think at the end of the day, like, we knew it wasn't one of our faults. It was just how Coach Ryan was. And that's just kind of you have to adapt to it. I think the most frustrating part for us, or for me at least, is that other guys had a longer leash than I did. And so, for me, I think the toughest thing to do is to play scared. Because when you're afraid of making a mistake, what ends up happening? You make a mistake.
Of course.
So once I kind of broke through that idea of who cares if you fuck up, just play, that's when I started to really like play and like come into my own. But before that whole, when it started like Sam in, me out, me in, Sam out, like it was tough not to think, what am I doing? Okay, don't turn it over. Don't take a bad shot. You play scared. And so a lot of times, you'd be out there, you'd get a rebound in 4 minutes. You don't put up a shot. You don't want to do anything wrong. And then you go back to the bench, you're like, okay, no mistakes. We're good. But at the end of the day, you look at your stats.
Yeah.
And it's like, you did nothing, It's like, what did you do to help the team win? And so finally I'm like, okay, I need to break out of this. I'm not helping myself and I'm not helping the team. Like, this is not beneficial to anybody. And once I was able to do that, it took my game to the next level and it also helped the team.
So Coach Ryan, what is he doing now?
I think he's in Palm Springs golfing.
Good for him.
Yes.
Good for him.
We saw him at the, we had in November, they had like a 10-year anniversary for our Final Four runs. And they did a little segment for him at halftime because he got honored at the Hall of Fame. And so we like ran into him, and I think he's in Palm Springs. I haven't spoken to him since I graduated, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So, I think he's living in Palm Springs, golfing. I don't know if he spends as much time or at any time in Madison. I know he comes back sometimes, but I think most of his time he's in Palm Springs just hanging out.
Bless him, man.
Yeah.
I was going through your college Final Four runs. Was that Kentucky team the best team you guys faced? I mean, all of these guys at one point played in the NBA.
Yeah.
That was 13-14, national semi, Julius Randle, Willie Cauley-Stein, former King.
Yep.
Aaron Harrison. Oh, the twins.
Yep.
Aaron Harrison, Andrew Harrison, James Young, who played for the Celtics, Alex Poitras, Dakari Johnson.
Yep.
Was that the best team you played against?
I think the next year's team was the best one.
Was it?
Yeah, that was like
Who did they add?
that was like the platoon squad. So that was, you had Carl Towns, Devin Booker,
Oh,
Tyler
yeah.
Ulis,
Yep.
Trey Lyles,
Still
Dakari
balling.
Johnson.
Trey Lyles in the NBA.
Yep. God, I hope I don't forget somebody. The Harrison twins, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But they had like literally a platoon squad. That's what they call it. They had like the blue team and the white team. They would sub in like 5 in, 5
Yes,
out.
I remember
a lot.
that. Yeah.
So that was the year that they were 38-0, and then we beat them. They went 38-1 the national semis, and that was like the biggest deal because there was a bunch of like white guys with a couple black guys sprinkled in. Beat a bunch of these top recruits because Carl Towns ends up being the #1 pick.
Yep.
Devin Booker ends up being, I think, top 15, and he's been unbelievable.
It has been unbelievable.
Trying to think who else they had on that team. Trey Lyles, as we said, he's had a long career.
While you're thinking about it,
Yeah.
so you played against Randall and you played against Towns.
Mm-hmm.
They're both incredibly tough. How did you play against them?
So to be honest with you, I was matched up with Julius my junior year, and Julius at the time did not want to shoot at all.
No.
His biggest thing was he wants to attack, be physical, go to his left hand, get to the rim or get near it, kind of mid-range or whatnot. And so literally I just backed off of him. I gave him space, and that was the thing. Now, nobody's going to say that they stopped Julius Randle, but that was our game plan. It was make him shoot. And so when you kind of give a guy that much space, it's hard not to think. It's like, oh, do I shoot? Do I not? Do I drive? Whatnot? So that was the biggest thing, kind of giving him that cushion. And then as soon as he drove, we had guys kind of come in and help. The game plan was great. It worked out perfectly. We hit the glass. That was the biggest thing, I think, was we needed to focus on rebounding because they have so much size.
Yes.
But unfortunately, Harrison had that great run of hitting that wing 3 where he beat, I think it was, I can't remember, Michigan maybe before us or somebody with that left wing. And then he hits us with the left wing 3 and bursts our bubble. But, it was perfect that we kind of got our revenge the following year.
What was that like as because let's be real, you are young when you're making those Final Four runs. What was that like as like a youngster in your life, having like such monumental things happen in your basketball career?
To be honest with you, it was surreal. It almost seemed normal, just in the sense because we did it my junior year. We go back my senior year. It kind of became routine in that sense.
Yeah.
So my junior year, it was like, whoa, we're in Cowboy Stadium. Like, whoa. Like huge
not built for basketball,
no,
by the way.
Like huge
very
backdrop.
intimidating.
Yeah, huge backdrop. Like you're shooting, you have seats that are, hundreds and hundreds of feet behind you, and it's just like a complete, like it throws off your depth perception. And I think for us, or at least for me, it became kind of a quote unquote norm. Like we expected to be there our senior year. But the thing that I always held on to was advice that Joakim Noah gave me before I left for college. He's like, man, when you go, enjoy every minute of it, because I promise you, when it's over, you're going to wish you had a couple more years. I promise you. He goes, whether whether your team sucks, whether you guys are great, whatever it is, you're going to want to hang on to
coming from a guy who won a few.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, fast forward to my experience, and it was just like so much fun. Like we were so busy, we didn't have time to think about, A, the attention that we were getting, B, like what a crazy like storm it was or anything like that. I think what put it into perspective is probably after the season finished and realizing how many people really did watch that run, running into people all around the world. I'm telling you, it's crazy how many Badger fans I've met around the world. I graduate, I go to London with my cousin, his son, and my dad for 3 days. We go to see an Arsenal game, go to see some soccer, hang out. Yeah. So my cousin is 15 years younger than me. So I think he was maybe 7, 8 years old at the time, and we're walking through Hyde Park, and he's on my shoulders, like we're hanging out, walking around. 2 people walk by. It's like, oh my God, Duje. I'm like, what? And I'm like, excuse me? They're like, yeah, we just watched you in the Final Four. I'm like, you guys went to Wisconsin? You're like, yeah, we were studying abroad here. Like, we loved it. Like, we like risked losing sleep, man. You guys gave us such a hell of a ride. I'm like, what?
Yeah, that's wild.
I was so confused, so like impressed, but you know, it's I really didn't understand the magnitude of like how big of a deal it was to what we were able to accomplish, because at the time, you know, Wisconsin sports, people really did like back us. That whole state was behind us.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Packer season was not going on. The Brewers, I don't think were very good. The Bucks, I don't think were that great. Like, it was literally us. And so that magnitude of support and love and everything, like, to this day, man, I can't say anything but thank you.
Yeah. They're so loyal.
Oh, yes.
They are so loyal. And they're everywhere.
Yes.
Badger fans are everywhere.
And not just that, but Packer fans too.
Yeah, Packer fans
It
too.
drove me nuts being a Bear fan.
In
Nuts.
Wisconsin?
Oh,
For sure.
It was the type of thing where I was like, I hate you guys, but I love you. Because it's like, they're so loyal to the Packers. They think they're the greatest thing on God's green earth. But then at the end of the day, I'm like, I can't hate these people because they support me. You know?
Yeah. Quite a conundrum.
Exactly. But at the end of the day, it's like, I like the Bears. Do I love them enough to like hate the people who support? No, because I don't they haven't produced anything for me to like go crazy over.
It's just a friendly rivalry. Did I just hear a camera go off, by the way?
Is that one of the honking outside?
No, it might have been the honking outside. Which one? Okay. I mean, you could just keep it on me, because I am curious about this stuff. I want to run through this. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's probably what it is. I think a lot of people, when they really even like have a thought about what it means to be a professional basketball player, like I find your road just so intriguing, man. Like, I really do. For those who don't know, stick with me, this is long. He was undrafted, played in the summer league for Sacramento. You were signed, you went to the G League, the Reno Bighorns, you were waived by the Kings. You went to Zagreb, you played with Ryan Boatwright, by the way. Shout out Ryan Boatwright.
Yep.
You would leave Zagreb. You would join the G League's Windy City, then D League, now G League. We'll say G League. Windy City Bulls. You won the Central Division Championship. You were traded to the Fort Wayne Mad Ants. You were selected in the G League expansion draft. There was a whole thing there between the Capital City Go-Go team and the Westchester Knicks.
Yep.
You then sign a 1-year deal with Estu in Spain.
Yep.
Shout out to Tony Douglas. You also played on a team with him.
Yep.
And formerly BJ Mullins.
Yes.
Byron Mullins.
Yes.
I don't even know when that happened, but I do remember it happening. And Melo Trimble was on that team too. Shout out Q. And then you sign with AB Castello in Spain.
Yep.
Right? You played with Matt Stainbrook. I remember that name with Xavier.
Yep.
October of 21, you signed with Cáceres Ciudad del Baloncesto in Spain. You signed with the Landstede Hammers in the Netherlands. You made the cup final there. And then in January of 2024, you signed with a team in Austria. What the fuck, man? There's so many teams. There's so many moving parts. Like, again, when people think about professional basketball, they think like, oh yeah, he's going to be with the team for 5 years. You know, so it's your story is unique to many people who don't pay attention to basketball, but like to go from NBA, G League, and then playing in Europe for so many different teams as well. I have so many questions on this, but like, how do you deal with the I'm putting words in your mouth here, but like, is it uncomfortable to like continue having these moving parts left and right in your career?
So I think when I was younger, the first couple of years, the instability was the toughest part, in the sense of coming back in the summertime, working out, not knowing where the hell I'm going to end up, where I'm going to sign, And the thought of, having to pack my bags for another 8-9 month window, not knowing anybody, starting from scratch. So the first couple of years it was tough. But luckily I think I'm a pretty outgoing person, who can get along with people well. So I made friends in all the places that I went, but unfortunately I never repeated. And so, as you said, I've kind of been around. I played in 4 different countries in Europe, for a whole bunch of different teams. And I think that's kind of been the toughest part, was early in my career, that instability. As I got older, I kind of just began to embrace it. It's like, okay, it's going to happen when it's going to happen. Fuck it. For now, I'm working out, focusing on, enjoying my summer, being with my family, being with my friends. When the time comes, when like an offer that I like is presented to me, I'll sign it, go. So once I kind of developed that mentality, it kind of put things more into perspective, and I was able to enjoy my summers. Whereas before it was like, oh shit, when am I leaving? When am I leaving? Oh, I got to do this before I go. I got to do this before I go, or this and that. And then at the end of the day, I realized I had more time. So, but I think I wouldn't change anything about it. Just because, shout out to the 3 years that I did in Spain. I now speak Spanish fluently.
Cool.
That was a huge plus for me. I think experiencing all these different cultures, living in all these different places, it really expanded my horizons in terms of seeing how different people live, how different cultures are. I think last year was really the first year. No, excuse me, 2 years ago when I played in the Netherlands, was the first year where I took advantage of being in Europe. So whenever I had like a free 2 days, I would just go somewhere. I'd literally hop on a flight and go.
Yeah.
So my GM, as a joke, would call me the Minister of Tourism because he's like, you're always gone somewhere. Like we played a cup game, and we win, and I literally drive to the airport. No, excuse me. I took a train to the airport, and slept in a bed at a hotel for like 3 hours, woke up. My flight was at 5 a.m. I flew to Copenhagen. I spent 2 days in Copenhagen walking around like a madman, so like sweet. Tourists and everything, fly back, practice on Monday, ready to go. And I did that. I went to Brussels. I went to London. I did Geneva, all in that like same year. Just like, and people were like, bro, how do you do it? I'm like, listen, when I find out what my off days are, I go home, I go on the computer, I go on Expedia, and literally I was just looking at where like good options for like cheap flights were, where I could go somewhere that I haven't been.
Mm-hmm.
And it just ended up being perfect that it was like all great locations that I would have gone to anyways. But like you said, once you're in Europe, everything is very cheap.
So easy, man.
It's
and
so
cheap.
easy.
Yeah.
It's so easy to fly anywhere. It really is. And so even last year when I was in Vienna, I took a train by myself to Budapest for 2 days. I spent 2 days in Budapest touring around. My mom came to visit me in Vienna. Then we went to Prague together.
Cool.
I'd never been. She'd never been. We went for 2 days, spent some time together, did some touristy stuff, and like all that kind of stuff. It was, it's crazy looking back on it, how far a little orange thing can take you.
Totally, yeah.
And so for me, I think now, like being kind of back home and realizing, I'm 33 years old. I'm kind of getting towards like the end of it and planning for life after basketball. I think the one thing that I wouldn't say regret, but that's been the toughest part has been not being here.
Mm.
You miss your family, you miss your friends. I have so many friends who I've missed engagements, I've missed weddings, I've missed bachelor parties, so much of that stuff that's been like such monumental events in my friends' lives, and I'm not here for it. And it kills me. But at the end of the day, I'm like, listen, I have a job just like they do. They're fortunate enough that theirs is a 9-to-5 here in Chicago. Mine is not a 9-to-5, and it's not in the same country.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect example. I had a close friend of mine. I was in the wedding. 2022, he got married. And we're in the playoffs. We go down 2-0 first round. We're the 8th seed. We're playing the 1 seed. We go down 2-0. And his wedding was the following Saturday, and we had just lost 2 games, and then we would play the next game, I think Wednesday, back home, and then Friday, and then, excuse me, it was 2 weeks after that. And so we played Wednesday, Friday, and then fast forward, and we played Wednesday of the following week, game 5. It was a 5-game series. So we go down 2-0. Then we come back to our place. We're like down, like this is going to be tough. We smack them in game 3. We win game 4. We're like, holy shit. In my mind, when we went down 0-2, I'm like, I'm making the wedding. You know what I mean? I'm like, I'm down 0-2.
Yeah.
I'm making the wedding.
Totally.
You know?
Yeah.
So I'm like, guys, listen, like the way it's looking right now, I'll probably be able to fly back. Don't count on it. Like, I can't promise anything, but we'll see. We go crazy in game 3. We win game 4. And then we go to game 5. I'm like, holy shit, we're 1 game away from the Final Four. Like, if we would have won that game, we qualify for the Final Four, and then it's whatever happens. So we end up going there, and we lost by, I think it was maybe 8-10 points. And I remember talking to my parents before. I'm like, do I just pack my shit? Because we bust. So that's the thing. We played, that was 2nd Division Spain. We bust everywhere. That's one thing I wish they would have changed. We had so many trips that were like 11, 12 hours.
Oh, my God.
Like, awful. Awful. I spent my 30th birthday busing from midnight to 7 a.m. from the northwest of Spain to like the southeast.
Oh, my God.
It was like an 8-9 hour bus ride.
They couldn't fly you out?
Because it's expensive. Teams don't have a whole lot of money. So it's like busing is cheaper. We'll just bus you out, get to the hotel, sleep, whatever. So anyways, the game finishes, and before the game, I was like talking to my parents, like, do I just pack my bags and whatever happens? Like, if we lose, you know, I'll just hop on the flight, get a flight from Barcelona, go, and I'll catch the wedding. And they're like, dude, you can't pack your bags. And they're like, and then they think that you're like ready to lose, which I'm not. So I'm like, you know what, fuck it. So I ended up missing my buddy's wedding. You know, they ended up putting like a stick figure, not a stick figure, but a cutout. Like a fat head, like to replace me. But I think that's the biggest thing is I think that people don't understand the misconception. Overseas is great. There's so many positives, but it's so lonely. It is extremely lonely, especially for the people that don't have people coming to visit, like friends, family, whatever the case may be. You get very lonely. It is great. You can make friends. You have teammates, but it really depends on the teammates and like the country that you're in. A lot of times they're not very like inclusive. They have their own lives. They have their own kids. They have their own families and stuff like that. I was fortunate enough where the places where I was, if the guys on the team weren't inclusive, I had foreigners who I could like go out with, hang out with. Perfect example. You mentioned Matt Stainbrook. Matt Stainbrook, shout out to Matt, great chef. He had us over for Thanksgiving when we played together in Spain because he had like a big apartment. I think he had us also then we went to another teammate of ours for Christmas. But I mean, it was great. Like he cooked up kind of like a big turkey, like a little makeshift Thanksgiving for the Americans that were celebrating there. So, you know, it's always nice. We kind of get a bit of a taste of home there. But I tell you what, there's always that kind of window of time where you get to like January, February, where you're like, I miss home. We're like 3 months away. It's already been 5. You start to get like antsy. And once the season ends, everybody's just like so excited to pack the foreigners. I mean, like the guys who are there, like the foreigners can't wait to go home because it's been a long year. Like you've been through so many ups and downs, whether you won, whether you lost, whatever the case may be. Like you learned a lot, go home, regroup, recharge, and get ready for what's next.
Right. On the loneliness front, I mean, how do you make friends when you're there who are non-teammates? Do you just have to be like a really outgoing person and know the language?
So listen, my first 2 years in Spain, my first year was amazing. I lived in Madrid. Estudiantes was amazing. Loved it. You know, heart of, you know, Spain. I loved my apartment, loved where it was and everything. Unfortunately got cut short because of COVID. So March rolls around, COVID hits.
Yeah, but we would have never met.
100%. So that in itself is a crazy story, how we got out and everything, my mom and I. Because ironically, we had a family friend of mine, his girlfriend, my mom, my dad, all were visiting me at the same time.
Oh.
My buddy was staying at my place. My parents were in a hotel because my dad was like already scouting.
Right.
And so we all go out to dinner after the game. The next morning, my dad, my buddy, and his girl fly out. My mom stays. My mom is like the ultimate, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm an only child. So like she can't be without her son for a long period of time, but it's also like she wants to cook. She wants to make sure I'm good. I'm like, Mom, I'm 28. I'm okay. Like, don't worry. But, you know, I can't turn her down.
Totally.
So she's like, I'm going to stick around for a couple extra days, cook for you a little bit. Cool. Well, in that same time, COVID breaks out. So I'm like, okay, you're not leaving the house. I will go do the shopping. You stay at home. You know, I put gloves on. I don't know what the fuck is going on. Like, we're going to the store. I'm doing this, doing that. Come home. And we find out that, you know, that they're going to put tanks on the road. And they're not going to. Yeah. So the Spanish government was going to put tanks on the road on Sunday to prevent people from going in and out of Madrid, to kind of prevent like the expansion of COVID, to not let people in and out. So when I hear that, I go into full-blown panic mode because I'm like, we need to get out of here. I was like, I wasn't so worried about myself. It was more so about my mom, just because like they always said, oh, it can hit the elderly worse. Okay. So we end up booking a flight. And I'll never forget, we come home, we dropped some stuff off. Luckily, shout out our friends in Spain. They sent some stuff to Croatia for us. And we like spent a little bit of time, but it's like, it was weird. Like, you don't know if you should say hi. We like sat on their couch. We talked, we left, we go home. And long story short, I'm like checking what time our flight's at so I can call like an Uber or a Cabify or whatever the hell it was for the next morning. Our flight gets canceled. I got no notification. So it's probably midnight. Our flight, we're supposed to leave at 4 for our flight. I'm panicking. I'm like, we need to get the fuck out of here. I was like, I call my dad. I'm like, listen, you try and get through to United. I'm going to do the same. And I'm like, it doesn't matter where, just fly me out of Spain. I was like, get me somewhere else. And then we can, you know, hop around, fly. So he's on the phone. He gets through before we do. And so I'm texting him and he's like, okay, great. Lady said Monday, you're all set. I'm like, no, Sunday, they're putting tanks on the road. We need to get out tomorrow, like tomorrow. And he's like, Duje, this woman is literally laughing at us. Like, she's like, what are you talking about? It's not going to happen. I'm like, where is she, out of curiosity? Like, where in the world? And he mentioned some random country. She wasn't in the US. She was somewhere else. I'm like, okay, if she's not here, tell her to shut the F up because she doesn't know what's going on. Politely. I'm like pissed off at this point. And so luckily we end up finding tickets. We flew through London back to Chicago. Not to mention that they lost our bags or anything. I'm like, I don't care. I just want to get home. We get home, but to go back to your question, I end up signing in October. After we met that summer. I signed in October to go to another city in Spain. This was COVID still. So you can't go out. You can't really, like, restaurants have to be outside. People aren't really mingling if they don't know you because they don't know where you've been. So that whole year was, you know, a crapshoot. I just knew my teammates. I met a couple friends, you know, through girlfriends or whatever the case may be, but that's it. Then luckily the year after that was kind of a normal year. COVID wasn't a thing. I shouldn't say it wasn't a thing. It wasn't as like prevalent. Exactly. So that's where, you know, I could go out a little bit, meet people and stuff like that. But I think it just depends. A lot of times people are able to make friends through fans. You know, people that come to games, show support and like, hey, you know, come to our restaurant or hey, come grab a bite to us, whatever. You know, nothing going on. Cool, let's do it. And that's how a lot of times people make friends. Or if it's like a friend of a friend, you know, somebody who supports the team, hey, I want to introduce you, that's how it happens. So, you know, for me, I met a lot of people. Unfortunately, a lot of those connections and everything that I had, I never went back.
Right.
So that's like the toughest thing. It's like, yeah, you work so hard to like kind of make this place home, but then you ship off and go somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's like the toughest part. Like you said, the whole loneliness factor. You try your best, try and make the best of the situation, meet people and everything. But at the day you remember like what you're there to do. And that's, play basketball, make a living, and kind of continue to pursue your dreams.
Right. On your European playing days, I think you're in a very unique position to answer this question. And I know that this is sort of like taken on a life of its own.
Yeah.
But do you know what I'm going to ask?
No.
Oh, because you gave me the look like you know. I have seen some quotes here, and I'll read a few to you if you want to react to these or give me your take. The differences between the NBA and Europe. A lot of people talk about the rules. We could go over the rules, but I'm not super interested in it. People know the rules at this point. Giannis said the game in Europe is way harder than the game in the NBA. Jokic said you have to have quick thinking. Lucas said scoring is easier, in the NBA. John Thompson, God rest his soul, said the Europeans are better prepared systematically, and as the result of it, rather than seeing themselves as entertainers, they still see themselves as teachers. Those kids are learning fundamentals and being taught the game of basketball. Our kids are being taught to be stars, even if they aren't stars, and therefore they don't even learn fundamentals. I have a Kobe quote as well that I'll read to you in a second, but do you align with what they're saying?
100%. I think the biggest difference in terms of the game itself, I think it's a lot more team oriented than it is here. Here, let's just take the NBA, for example. A lot of guys here get by on individual talent, not necessarily play calls or anything like that. It's just individual talent. You're a better athlete, you're a better shooter, whatever the case may be. Over there, it doesn't really work like that because defenses will shift to take you away. Like they will game plan to take you out of the game. And then you have to figure out a way to get yourself back in the game. So, like Jokic said, I think over there, you're not going to find as many great athletes, but way better, like way higher IQ in terms of reading the game, like putting 2 and 2 together, pass, give and go, because that's how they have to get by. If you're not an athlete, if you can't like do certain things at an extremely high level, what can you do? So that was, I think, like the biggest, transition for me was that's kind of how I had always played, was playing on my like instincts. So when I got there, I was like, whoa, this is different. And they really kind of take time and prep and everything. But the biggest difference that I noticed was how much they take time with young kids and really develop, work on skills and everything like that. You have, and I think the biggest thing or organization to blame here is AAU.
Okay, so the Kobe quote, if I may.
Go ahead.
Okay, because that is perfect. He said on the European versus NBA front, I just think European players are just way more skillful. They are just taught the game the right way at an early age. It's something we really have to fix. We really have to address that. We have to teach our kids to play the right way. He would blame AAU basketball. Horrible, terrible AAU basketball. It's stupid. It doesn't teach our kids how to play the game at all. So you wind up having players that are big and they bring it up and they do all this fancy crap and they don't know how to post. They don't know the fundamentals of the game. It's stupid. Thoughts?
I mean, couldn't have said it better myself. I think AAU is one of those things where it's so misleading in terms of, people here think it's such a great opportunity, such a it could be used as such a platform or a springboard to propel you to college, propel you to NBA and everything. But at the end of the day, like, you're missing the biggest thing. You're not learning how to play. Yeah, you guys are going to all these showcases, you're going to all this stuff. And again, you're getting by on individual talent, skill, ability, whatever the case may be, but you're not learning the game. You're not learning pick and roll coverages. You're not learning how to switch defensively. You're not learning how to guard certain guys, different various defenses, whatever the case may be. Like, you're not learning how to play. And you go to Europe and these kids are playing, 3-on-3, 2-on-2, 1-on-1, like all these games in practice. Here, you don't do that. You know what I mean? And like you're doing that. But the biggest thing too is like they have guards doing big man drills and bigs doing guard drills. So it's like they're preparing you to be able to do everything. And I think a perfect example of how Kobe was saying, like they're so much more skillful in everything. When was the last time you saw a guy come from Europe to the NBA and you said he wasn't skilled?
Oh my God.
Every time
I have
a guy,
no idea. Maybe a name that you gave only because I've seen him shoot a three.
and
this is like an hour ago, but Omir, I guess.
Again, but he was a prototypical 5.
Yes.
Then
100%. Yeah.
And
powerful
so he was
big,
literally
only
powerful
rebounding.
big, rebounding, defense. That's
Dunks.
it.
That's it.
That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was still what, 2009,
That was the D Rose
2010,
years.
2011.
Mm-hmm.
So now you look at how the game's developed and how all the big men can shoot, all the big men can drive, all the big men can post and everything.
Yes.
But these Europeans that come over, a lot of them aren't athletic. A lot of them aren't quick, but they know how to play. Look at Luka. Look at Jokic.
Look at the Spurs.
Look at the Spurs. Like
they recruit them.
So for me, it's always funny, like when we have these conversations about, basketball and AAU and everything. To me, I'm like, okay, so explain to me how guys like Jokic, who literally couldn't jump over a credit card, Luka, who I think my dad could probably outrun, are dominating the league. How?
Fundamentals, and they think about the game differently.
Exactly.
But also they slow it down.
That's the biggest thing.
They really do.
And the other thing, too, that I noticed with those two in particular is they have fun with it. Jokic is just toying with the league. Luka, same thing. I think Jokic is on a different level than Luka.
Oh, completely, yeah.
But
they're also different players.
But in the sense of like just playing at their speed, not getting sped up. Two perfect examples of guys that like control the game with their pace. And guys have tried to speed them up. They've put long defenders, quicker defenders, smaller defenders. They don't know what to do. So going back to AAU and everything, I think that's the biggest thing is kids get to college after AAU and you watch a lot of these college games and there's so many like basic mistakes that happen that could be fixed if kids are taught to play the game correctly. And I mean, we could go on and talk about AAU and now you have NIL and all that stuff. And to be honest with you, I think the importance of basketball and the game itself has gone down the shitter, for lack of a better word, because kids now the priority is, okay, how do I work on my game to get NIL, to make more money? And then, like we talked about earlier, you asked me why I didn't leave. Different mentality. Back then it was, no, I want to stay and prove myself and prove that I can play. Now, as soon as you're not playing, you're off to go somewhere else. Where can you get more money? That's just what it is. So I'm talking a perfect, great example. I talked to a guy who works at Wisconsin. He's in charge of like NIL. And he's like, I sat in on 2 basketball meetings this past summer on 2 kids that were like looking to transfer. He's like, Duje, within 5 minutes, the first question they ask is, how much can you offer me? It's not what type of system, where do you see me? No, it's how much can you offer me? I'm like, that's what we've come to. It's just money. Where can I get the most?
With AAU, isn't there a certain aspect that we didn't touch on, which is like the politics of it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
that's the elephant in the room.
Yeah. So, I mean, when you don't play for a certain team or a certain circuit, you might not get the kind of coverage or exposure that you want. And, there's a lot of teams that don't have the funding that other teams do. So a lot of kids who, quote unquote, might be better or better prepared for college don't get that exposure, don't get scholarships, simply because other guys are playing for teams that have sponsors, whatever the case may be, or kids or parents with deeper pockets, So I think that's like the biggest thing is it becomes a lot of times about who has more money or who can kind of like market their team better, not who's playing better, because there's a lot of teams who can't travel because they don't have funding or they can't afford it, who might be better, but you don't see them, you don't hear about them because they're not at these big circuits.
Right. Isn't there also like there's the angle of certain AAU teams being signed by Nike or being signed by Adidas or being signed by Reebok. So there's like the pipeline from them being on a Reebok AAU team wanting to basically like a Reebok school then having the upper hand in potentially getting them to come to their school.
Yeah. I mean, that's a huge thing. A lot of times these kids, especially before, now I don't know how prevalent it is just because of the amount of money that can be offered for NIL and everything. But a lot of times that was a big effect. You know, if kids knew that they were going to be one and done, and for example, they're going to sign with Adidas, they're not going to go to a Nike school. It's not going to happen. But if they're Nike guys and they want to go to a Nike school, you damn well know some big Nike execs will make sure that they somehow decide whether it's Duke, Carolina, you know, whatever those Kentucky, whatever those schools are that are Nike, that they end up there, you know? So there's, as you said, there's so much politics. There's so much stuff that goes into it. I just hope that, you know, at some point down the road, there can be a happy medium with all that stuff so that we can really put an emphasis on basketball and not the stuff outside of it.
Yeah, definitely.
You know?
Yeah, for sure. Well, Duje, I appreciate you. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you coming here.
My pleasure.
I always appreciate talking hoops.
For sure.
It is how we bonded initially over the pandemic.
Definitely.
So, look, I'm deeply appreciative. I appreciate the stories, and I appreciate your time.
Thanks for
wherever
having me.
you decide to go for your next 8 or 9 months of work. Keep us in the loop. But yeah, man, best of luck.
Will do. Thank you so much for having me. Had a great time.
Of course.